Hey there folks, my name's Brandon Kavanaugh. So what does the new strength and conditioning hire mean for Nebraska? And with what Mike Riley ran at Oregon State, what does that mean for the Nebraska offense? Find out coming up right after this. Hey there folks, again, welcome to 5-Step Drop. My name is Brandon Kavanaugh. We've got some great questions today, a couple of them. First from Dan Hicks, who wants to know a little bit about what Nebraska needs from the S&C position, and actually a great question because Nebraska just brought on Mark Phillip from USC, spent a little bit of time at Oregon State, and actually played at Southern Illinois, so not unfamiliar with the Midwestern I want to say forecasts and playing in the cold and whatnot, which could play into recruiting here, and we'll get into that in a second. But this is a guy. I mean, when you're looking for what you want in it, I don't know, is a wild man, just absolutely, young Samoan guy that'll absolutely, light a fire under your ass if you're slacking. Is that what you want? Because if so, that's what they got. I like this hire a lot. Yeah, he's young. He doesn't really have a huge track record, and that had some blowback initially. His Twitter profile wasn't exactly all that professional, but I didn't. Some people were hitting me up with that, and I'm like, that doesn't mean a darn thing. I mean, if USC said, "Hey, okay, yeah, Trojans bring him in," and say, "Yeah, we'll work with them," that's good enough for me. And if Riley wanted to go out and say, "Yeah, let's work with them again," that's good enough for me because his hires as of right now looking pretty good. So I'm willing to go with that. Now, as far as what S&C does need, what strength and conditioning does need, two main things. Number two, and it's a close number two, is nutrition. A lot of people joke about Chipotle, especially after the Matt Slauson go down. I forget where exactly in Lincoln this is, and I'm sure you can talk to somebody if you're in or near Lincoln. There's a location down there. They have I guess a hidden menu item called the Matt Slauson. And Matt Slauson, who's an offensive lineman for Nebraska, would go and basically get 2 burritos in one. So if you got an hour to kill or something like that, you might want to go down and have a Matt Slauson. Maybe you've got some money burning a hole in your pocket. So, that being said, as long as you have the calories in your system that you will eventually burn off, Chipotle and whatnot is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. However, with Nebraska having such a fantastic training table, I've been able to have the pleasure of enjoying it. You've got some great steak, you've got some crab legs that aren't necessarily from Publix and we're actually paid for. Yes, we are doing a James Winston joke this episode. There's no reason to necessarily run to Chipotle unless you want to use those Husker bucks that you happen to have. So, not going to make fun of them. Now, the number one thing you want to do is you want to have the facilities, but you want to have accountability. Now, if you haven't seen any pictures of Mark yet, I feel like since he is a part of the Nebraska program, we can be on a one-on-one name basis, right? So, if you look at what Mark's done, or at least pictures of Mark, he seems like a pretty intense guy. And I actually tweeted this out once I had confirmation that he was going to be hired. Is he's not a guy that you really want to look like you can try and pass an excuse off for. So I think we're going to see a little bit more accountability under Mark than under James Dobson. I think there was a lot of questioning of whether or not James was actually holding these guys accountable. Now, I can't say that for sure, but I have seen S&C departments where guys will come in, they'll do a little bit of stuff, and they'll say, okay, check me off because I technically wasn't here. Okay, sure, fine. And that's not going to fly at a top FBS school. And as we've seen from even just recruiting, Mike Riley's not going to treat this as just some FBS school. This is pretty much his legacy. I'm not saying what he did at Oregon State was bad, but this is pretty much his legacy. So that's what you can expect from SNC. Those are the main two needs out of SNC. That nutritional value, which again I think Nebraska has wonderful staff for, and then of course Mark stepping up, and I'm gonna guess that Boyd Epley's probably gonna shuffle some knowledge Mark's way as well. Alright, second question from our good buddy Brad Ryan. Assuming the offense is the same as Riley's at Oregon State, what players are going to benefit the most? Well, there's quite a few players that could actually benefit the most from this, and it's really hard for me to say like one particular quarterback, but I think all the quarterbacks get a fresh slate. They're going to be asked to do different things. They're going to be totally revamped. It's kind of a clean slate, and it's not to be said that I don't think Tommy Armstrong should get like first dibs. I really don't. I mean, if he can earn that spot, that starting spot back, great. That means he's the best athlete for the job. I believe there was a piece by Steve Sipple saying no, he should get dibs on it, and I totally disagree with that. If it's Armstrong, if it's Fife, if it's Stanton, if it's AJ Bush, who we've heard a lot about. And I don't know if you've been following this whole scenario, but Riley was recruiting Johnny Stanton hard. There was a picture of Johnny Stanton and Riley meeting, so make of that what you will. I don't really make much of it. But the quarterbacks have a ton to do with it. Wide receivers have a lot to do with it. And I think right now Nebraska has a lot of great wide receivers for what Riley's looking to do. You look at possession guys, and I don't want to say that Jordan Westerkamp's a possession guy, but you need to have a guy in this offense, in this typical pro-style offense. Well, it's not really typical because Riley's nice enough that he can kind of move people around to what they can do as opposed to square peg and a round hole, kind of like Callahan did. But when you've got a guy with hands like that in Westerkamp, you can be efficient very quickly. Alonzo Moore is a guy that I think if he can get his hands going a little bit more, can be a real threat. There's some guys in the wide receiving core that I think can be very dangerous. And the good news, too, is that you're probably going to see some dump-offs to running backs, and there are some very speedy running backs. There's guys like, obviously Amani Cross and Terrell Newby, but also there's guys like Adam Taylor and Mikal Wilbon, who Wilbon, I believe, picked up MVP status from the scout team. Doesn't really shock me at all, and Adam Taylor was out this year with an injury, but I want to see what those two can do. Also, you're going to see screens, so I mean, a lot of it are people who are going to be in receiving opportunities. I was watching Green Bay versus Tampa Bay today, and I couldn't help but watch Green Bay quite a bit. And I could see a little bit of what Green Bay does. I don't know how familiar you personally are with what Green Bay does, but they have the opportunity where they line up in some power formations. They have some opportunities where they line up in like a 3 wide receiver, but they also have the opportunities where they get the tight ends involved. I could see Nebraska coming out this next year. It's hard to say what would happen with the tight ends because that spot is a little low, but eventually, as the tight end spot becomes more and more, when there's more depth in that tight end spot, we could see a little bit more power running. But regardless, there's quality running backs there. We don't necessarily know how that's going to end in the cycle, but regardless, I don't see, unless it's like a 5-star, can't miss running back, a new running back getting into the mix there. It's a very deep position as it is. So unless all 4 of the people I mentioned absolutely tank, they're gonna do well, and I'm very hopeful that the offensive line and defensive line do well. I think another position that we're gonna see do well, I'd like to see what Charlton Warren does with the secondary. I'm very interested in seeing what he can do with the safeties, with the cornerbacks. I think there's just going to be a lot more fun on the defensive side of the ball, especially when it comes to the secondary. And these are guys that are going to be just like, hey, lot less thinking, more reaction, and don't play stupid. Obviously, don't go out for the obvious interference. Play the ball, and I mean that's kind of silly. It goes without saying, but I think that's going to be fun. Linebackers are going to have to learn a lot, but I think in terms of the guys who are going to get the most out of this move, quarterbacks 100% absolutely. Wide receivers are going to have fun. Those are the two areas that I can say are going to be great. I think Westerkamp's going to have a lot of fun. I would look at Moore as a sleeper still at this point. He's a fantastic athlete. I've been saying that since day one. Just need to see the light bulb click. And as far as who starts at quarterback, I expect great things. Honestly, I expect great things from pretty much the whole darn depth chart, but 1 and 2 I really expect great things from. Alright, well, hey, thanks for tuning in to yet another Q&A session of 5-Step Drop, but we're not quite done yet. Well, at least from my position we are. So go ahead, in the meantime, follow me on Facebook, on Twitter. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, of course. Now, as far as what I mean by we're not done with me, or we are done with me, but we're not done entirely, down in the description below, there is a link to, I'd like to consider at least a friend, maybe a really good acquaintance, Miss Linsey, who actually works for 93.7 The Ticket. If you folks have listened to 93.7 The Ticket, you will have heard me on there a time or two. And she actually has a little bit of a rant regarding Kate Upton. So if you happen to enjoy Miss Upton, or you're just curious about what I just said, click on the link below and the little summary down there. Be sure to leave comments, of course, and be sure to leave comments about what she thinks about Kate Upton. Definitely curious about what you may have to say about that, because it is certainly interesting. But in the meantime, folks, take care, stay safe, go Big Red.